So actually, to provoke the discussion, could you put up the last image?
So,
Not the one, yeah, right there.
yes.
Okay, does anybody know who that is? No, it's just a painting of a guy. It's a painting of Oedipus. So a friend of mine, a very left-wing Maoist in the United States, wrote something that I thought was very clever. He said the problem with liberals today is that they have an Oedipal complex. Oedipus killed his father, slept with his mother, fathered children with his mother, and when he realized what he had done, what did he do? He put his eyes out so he wouldn't have to see what he had done and what he had been part of. And the argument is that, and I'm not saying it to this audience, but in general, you know, we tend to blind ourselves to the underlying reality of the imperialism that we live under and prosper from in the West. And that's one of the issues that we're trying to dig into.
Okay, thank you. So we have a first question from the audience today.
I just right? Does it? Okay. I have two questions. One is, do you actually advertise your TV also around the States? Because I used to live in New York myself, and I think that the people there are very aware and very well educated. And I think they pretty know what is going on, but I don't think that in several other states of the United States they do know. This is my first question. The second one is, what are you actually doing today? What are your issues? Because the ones that we've seen were from the past.
They were in the past, except we're still doing it. As
I
we
know, but
speak.
I mean, what is what
Yeah.
can you tell us?
Okay,
some
so
actual
on the first
topics?
question, just on this CD, we made it into a 3 DVD set, and we did screenings all over the country with it. We were in many conferences where we showed it. We showed it at a conference of public television people, about 1,000 public television people from all over the world in San Francisco in, I think, 2005. And we partnered with Pacifica Radio, which is a not-for-profit radio network, has 5 channels in the United States, in New York and Houston and Los Angeles and San Francisco and Washington, D.C. And I think in partnering with them, they offered the DVD as a premium, and I think we distributed 6,000 copies of the DVD that way, and we charged them $10, and it kind of, they sold it for whatever, and it kind of helped us underwrite the cost of making it. Today we're working on a series called An American Nightmare: Black Labor and Liberation, and we're addressing the question of why is it after 160 years after slavery is racism still such a virulent force in American society? And so I could go into that. There's a trailer that I could show you for it. And part of that is we're also working to set up community media centers. So the first one, we're working with a group from Jackson, Mississippi, to develop their own media center there, and we're sending videographers down to train people so that they'll have the tools and the ability and the skill to tell their own stories.
Okay, Yasser?
So, Brian, thank you for the presentation. You were talking about how powerful the media is and how they have this system of conveying the information and spreading the message that they want, and that you insisted many times that we shouldn't play by their rules. Well, the thing is, we should confess in many ways that it is effective, it is working, and it is a successful solution what they are doing. So in order to counter that, we would not say that we will play in a different way, or we will not deny that these tools exist, but I would rather encourage people to create a new solution. What do you think about creating a new model of reaching information, of spreading information?
Well,
how can we make this model obsolete? That people, for example, now they don't watch TV. I mean, TV viewing rates are just like going down because of YouTube, because of all these open source communities that provide information.
Yeah.
And the thing that you are doing is very interesting and very beautiful. But you are one of, let's say, how many people who are doing this actually? Because you have the means. You said now we should have the skills, we should have the creativity to do that. But why not everybody would do that? And by that I'm saying that let's create a solution for people to grab on and say their own point of view, instead of being at the same time with the same way affected by alternative media that is as well spreading other ideas.
Okay, you're right, and actually that's what we're trying to do. I mean, this series that I showed you clips from was made by over 100 videographers, artists, producers, and editors, right? And each program, each half-hour program was made up of 3 or 4 clips that came from all over the country, and in some cases all over the world. And so, you know, what and throughout this, what we've tried to do is to feature the voices of people, which the only time people, ordinary people, working people, oppressed people get their face on television, maybe a little bit more now on the internet, is to be ridiculed and to made fun of. And so we've tried to counter that rule of the corporate media by actually giving voice and treating people's ideas with respect and dignity, even though you don't have to agree with everything is the way it's voiced. But so part of our production process is to engage, you know, as many people as possible. And what we're doing with this racism project is, you know, it won't be made entirely down in Jackson, Mississippi, and there's real problems of their skill set and how long it'll take them to develop. But we feel it's really important to actually, in the process of dealing with racism, to give voice and put the tools for making this series into the hands of the people who are the most oppressed by the system.
Yes. The Freudian stick.
I was hoping you would ask a question.
Thank you for the speech. My question for you is the response, or the response by the average American citizen, those that are not necessarily part of the movement, the anti-war movement, workers, unorganized people that simply just live their lives, and the mainstream. If I suppose the middle class is the biggest majority of the American people, and how they respond, how they take that message from your work.
Okay, so a really great example is Occupy Wall Street, right? The 1% versus the 99%. It completely changed how the American people think about class division in America. It wasn't a Marxist analysis or anything like that, but people thought, yeah, that's right. They're getting everything, we're getting nothing. I mean, I got a call from an old neighbor, our houses were next door to each other when we were 5 years old, and I've seen her twice in 40 years, and she called me up and said, what do you think about this 99% versus the 1% thing? She said, I think it's right. My daughter's getting her house taken away because she, something on the mortgage. And so that was a case where a slogan actually ran wild across the country, and Trump and all these guys are playing on it right now, right? I think that the other thing to consider is that when movements start, it's pretty fallow ground. I mean, in the Vietnam War era, I went to demonstrations with 5 or 10 people, and it was kind of discouraging, And by the end of it, there were millions of people in the street. And so I think that we shouldn't underestimate the power of the social movements and the power of the artist's visualization Because somebody said this earlier, people aren't stupid, and they're not mean, and they're not evil, right? But we're programmed by people who are. Excuse me, I thought I turned this
So
off.
popular.
I thought I know, and I'm paying 50 cents a minute for it. So I would just say that I have a lot of confidence in. Okay, so another example is we did a film on Gaza 2 years ago called "Where Should the Birds Fly." It was made by a young woman from Rafah City that Deep Dish produced, and we've shown it in many different kinds of audiences. And we don't propose it. She doesn't propose a solution. She just describes the life of two young women in Gaza. And we've gotten extremely positive response from people in Kansas and in California, and so I'm kind of optimistic that if you can reach people and be clear that you're telling the truth, you can have an impact. And that doesn't answer the question of how we overcome the power of the empire and build something else, which isn't just another empire. But I think that's the discussion we need to be having, and we need to learn from our past experience.
Thank you. I give the last question for this session to Elena.
Hi, hello. So my question is, yes, it's a little bit of a follow-up question to him, and is how can you, in your experience, how can you make people interested in these issues when through your channel, when the problems are not happening to them? Like you yourself said it now, this person called you because the daughter's house was being evicted. So we become very aware of the problems when they are somehow happening to us, when you had something that is suddenly taken away from you, right? And that's when you become so interested in issues because they're touching you. So how can we how can you in your work, through your medium, through your TV, seduce, make people interested in this kind of work when they are so far away from that kind of a problem?
Okay, I'll give you one example. And this is a very good question that we've been, considering and trying to break our heads on for a long time. There are 40 million black people in America. They are a irrelevant demographic economically. Black people have no current or future economic role in the United States. That's a rather provocative statement, but I can argue that point. Why is that? Because black Americans historically created vast wealth for America and Europe. The industrialization of America and Europe was based on slaves picking cotton. Today, and somebody said this earlier in the thing, today, you've got millions of black people in prison or going through the prison system. You've got black communities occupied by military force. You've got 1 or 2 black people killed every single day by cops in America. The police in America this year will probably kill close to 3,000 people. That's about the same number of people that died in the World Trade Center. Now, the reality of the system that we live under affects people. The question is, how do they see that problem? They know they're being affected, but how do they understand it? Do they get the understanding from the media? Well, it's those damn Muslims and Nicaraguans and Mexicans that are taking our jobs, right? It's beginning now to impact in a serious way white working class people. And what is impacting them? Globalization and automation. It's the same thing that's eliminating black jobs in America. And so, the reality of modern capitalism is in fact touching everybody's lives. Not necessarily, to be frank, it's not touching my life so much, but it's touching the lives of millions of people. And I think our job is to give voice and help people dig deeper into what the causes of their contradictions are. And so I think there's somebody said, the material basis for revolution is capitalism. It's the source of the problem. Now, what's the solution? That's yet to be decided.
So we might perhaps say that you're working in a more long-term and patient way with information, opposing from the presentations yesterday, working more like with the center, more like assault teams than, or having these aesthetic attacks on power. So it is a different.
Well, first of all, I can't work too long term. I'm 74, so I don't have that much time to work. But I think that actually we're having, sure, it takes a long time to make a documentary, right? But the people that work at Deep Dish now are telling me, forget it, you got to make a 3-minute documentary because nobody's going to watch an hour documentary. So in a certain sense, we're being pushed more in the assault direction. But I still think these long forms are really important.
Sorry, I was misusing my power because I said it was the last question, but this was the last question and it was the last word from you so far, Brian. So thank you all. Give Brian a hand.
Thank you.